Yes. Welcome, everybody. I think we're on. I cannot see you and I can't hear you. So, but they just announced that the broadcast is now on. So we're on. So my name is Gudrun Giddings. Again, welcome. I'm the president and chair of the Swedish-American Chamber of Commerce, Los Angeles. And today we're doing our very first webinar, just like I explained to the panelists. And they were like, who? We're like the test people. I'm all like, yeah, but we tested it a couple of times already. But this is the first webinar live that we're doing, which I'm super excited about. And it might even be a series because we've gotten so many of you to register that it's proven to be already a success based on you guys, the audience. So maybe we'll do this again. So look out for invitations, and we'll just feature other super talented SACC-LA members and sponsors and all of those. Do it on different themes and subjects in the future. I also want to just briefly go through for the audience, if you want to post questions during this broadcast, you see a little control panel on your right-hand side. You can text, you can write questions there, and you can be anonymous or you can write a name or whatever. I will see them, nobody else will see them, but I will, as I'm the moderator. And as I've done this before, not for the chamber, sometimes there's an overwhelming amount of questions. So don't be disappointed if I don't ask your question specifically, if we run out of time. But please do. I think it is really fun. And usually there's a lot of good questions that I have forgotten to ask our dear panelists. So that's that. I'm now gonna, I think, just introduce our panelists. So let's start with the lady, Sara Fahlgren. Yeah. You can tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Sure, absolutely. My name is Sara Fahlgren. I'm 30 years old. I live in Los Angeles, California, but I was born and raised in Gothenburg in Sweden. I've been working in hospitality since I was about 15 years old, and I moved to London when I was 18 and started working for Soho House & Co, so the same company Cecconi is. And then I worked about 5 years, different positions. I started as a server and worked any sort of front of house position in reception and in a server and a bunch of other stuff. And then I moved, and then I got an opportunity to move to Chicago to open the house there with Soho House. So I did that and stayed for a year. And then I got the offer to open a new project that we did at Soho House with Hollywood. So I worked up the street for about 3 years. And about 2 years ago, I got the offer to work at Cecconi. So now I'm the general manager there.
Great, thank you. And then Jonas.
All right, I'm Jonas Tåhlin. Well, I don't know about that, but I am Jonas Tåhlin. I'm Swedish as well, obviously. Maybe not a very Swedish Swede in the sense of not having lived in Sweden that much. I grew up in Stockholm, but then moved to London quite early. Studied at the Stockholm School of Economics and joined Procter and Gamble, and they sent me all over the world. So I've lived in Geneva and in Rio de Janeiro and Caracas, in Zurich, in New York, and then in London, and then New York again, and then Los Angeles. And I'm currently in Stockholm. Yes, I know. It sounds like a travel agency. And so now I'm in Stockholm, but my wife and I were moving to Paris to start the next chapter of our lives. I've only had 2 employers out of the Stockholm School of Economics. I started with Procter and Gamble. I was there for almost 10 years, and then I joined Absolut vodka / Pernod Ricard, and I was with them up until just 2 months ago when I resigned to join Lvmh, the French luxury group in Paris. Wife and a 1-year-old baby.
Yeah, that's exciting. Like, and we all love your family as well. And Janina, his wife, is actually a board member on our board as well. So thank you for that. We're just in case for the audience, we're missing one panelist, not because he didn't want to be here, but because he had some technical difficulties. He could hear us, but you couldn't see him and we couldn't hear him. So we're hoping to fix it. And if our sort of crew behind the scenes, if you can get Christian up and running, he can join anytime. Just have him jump in and we'll be happy to have him join. So I'm sure maybe there's a button to push or something like this on his computer and he can jump in. But there's plenty enough of questions and we only have an hour. So I think this will be a successful webinar no matter what. So I'm going to start with a question because this is different to all people. It's a little bit of it could be a philosophical thought or only your opinion, but we'll go back to Jonas and ask him what success is to you.
It's a bit of a tricky question, but I suppose the way I'll answer it is probably to say that having worked now for a little over 20 years, approaching 25, my definition of success has certainly changed. I think in the first 10 or 15 years, it was a lot about, you know, getting the bigger job or getting the promotion or you know, the bigger and more powerful and more money and all of that stuff. And I think it'd probably be untrue to say that none of that stuff is important, but I think certainly for me now, success is much more around happiness, to be honest, as plain as that may sound. And I think happiness in doing what you love and happiness in enjoying your colleagues. So I think success is being happy. I remember a long time when I, been in jobs where you have a lot of anxiety on Sunday night when, you have to go to work on Monday, and being in a position where you don't feel that anymore. You're enjoying the idea of going to work and you're loving what you do. I think that is success for me now.
Yeah, great. Very good answer. I like it. And then Sara.
Yeah, I mean, a bit similar. I think that success is when you can completely feel that the person is passionate at what they do and also share it with the people around them. I think that when that passion shines through, then that's what a successful person is. And again, like, of course, it's great to make money and sort of climb up the ladder, but the actual success part, I think, is when you are just happy and that is like thoroughly is shining through.
Yeah, great. I agree. I like to be happy no matter what I do. Then it doesn't matter so much. Then also, even though we're talking about happiness and just that general sort of base, it would be interesting still to hear some fun, if you have some, to share, maybe like, because it's still a like you're still grateful for when you have these moments where you're like, yes, I did it, like something happened that you've been striving for, or you set a goal for yourself, whatever it is. Like, I mean, since we are the Chamber of Commerce and we're talking a little bit business here, obviously in business would be fun. Like if you got a job you really wanted, or if you accomplished something at that job. Any one of you can jump in. Like, when you're like,
ladies first.
Okay. I would say when in the position that I am in right now, when I got the offer to take over Cecconi, so I think that was definitely a big step in my career. And it was one of those things that my boss at the time, Thomas, which has been my boss for the past like 7 years, we worked together in London and then Chicago, and now we're in LA. So when he asked me, I was like, really? Are you sure? Because I've always looked up to the general managers in the company. So that day was definitely one of those, like, yes, like I'm really proud of what I just did.
Can I ask, did you apply for the job in LA for Cecconi's, or did they just offer it to you?
I didn't apply, no.
So they just thought you were brilliant and just offered it to you. Take it.
I didn't. Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great. Hey, that's awesome. Jonas?
Well, first of all, just to say, I think what you're describing, Sarah, is really my experience as well. I think a lot of people would maybe ask, like, how do you do this to get this or that job? Or my experience really is that if you're doing something, you're keeping your head down, you're working really hard, you're enjoying it, and things are going well, that tends to be the best thing that you can possibly do to get that dream job. It's really being very good at what you're doing right now. I find a lot of people are spending a lot of time thinking about the next step and the job after that. And that's all good because we want to have aspiration. But I think the best thing that we can all do is really just to be good at what we're doing. And then my experience is really that the rest tends to kind of take care of itself, like it did in Sarah's example here. To your question, the most gratifying thing, I think personally, when you go like, yeah, I did it sort of feeling is when you've done something and worked really hard and you're seeing it work. That's incredibly gratifying. I've been in marketing and general management for most of my career, and as you both know, and maybe some other people listening, my last venture was to develop a new vodka in America, which was Absolut Elyx, the luxury version of Absolut. It was really tough, and it was a lot of work, and building a brand in a marketplace that's as big as America is difficult. But then when you've applied yourself, really worked hard, and you go to a new city and you go to a bar or restaurant and you see people are ordering that brand that you've been slaving away at, that to me is like, that's, you know, yes, kind of I did it sort of moment, when you're seeing that the work that you put in is translating into people buying that product and it's getting its own sort of steam. That to me is probably one of those success moments that makes me very happy.
Yeah, I didn't know, Jonas, that you developed the luxury brand of sort of Absolut.
Yeah, no. First of all, I should probably clarify. I'm not a chemist or a vodka engineer. I didn't develop the actual juice, the vodka itself, but I certainly launched it and sort of drove it.
Yeah, but that was part of the whole launch because it's a super popular brand. Everybody on the planet knows Absolut, of course, but
Yes.
Elyx, you know, the luxury brand, like how I usually explain it. Didn't know that was, I didn't know. So that's awesome to be part of something that is a worldwide brand.
I was frustrated that all of the Americans were drinking Grey Goose and Belvedere and other stuff instead. And so Absolut obviously needed to have its own luxury variant, and that's how it came to be.
Yep. I just see that we have Christian. Can you hear us?
Yay, yes.
Yes.
Again, sorry for that. It's
no.
Using the iPad instead.
Welcome. So glad, and that's what I said. You I don't know if you heard or not, but I'm glad you were able to fix it, you know, with our behind the people that's setting all of this up. It's not me. I'm not setting this one up, or nor the technology, but great to have you, Christian. We've been just talking a little bit still in the beginning of the whole webinar about success and all of that, but maybe you can just jump in and just quickly introduce yourself, like who you are and like where you came from and what you're doing currently.
Sure. So quick version, grew up in Stockholm and headed into a professionally a career in telecoms. That was kind of my passion. So I'm an engineer in the background. Spent 7-8 years working on that, which brought me to Germany and the UK. And then after a year in London, I felt I was due back in Stockholm and wanted to do something else than telecoms. And long story short, jumped into building my own restaurant company with a concept called Vapiano, which I had found in Germany. I did that for 10 years. Launched a new company and sold the previous one, and that took me to LA at some point. That's the very short version. And on the private side, right now living just northwest of LA and staying put in my house because we have no other option, and with my 2 boys and my wife.
Yeah, we're all calling in obviously from our houses because we have no other option. So I think it is sort of interesting that everybody on TV and everybody who's doing anything is all calling in from home, which I don't know, it gives it a little more of a personal feeling, and it doesn't have this thing that late night shows or morning shows usually have, where everybody, looks perfect as they walk in front of the cameras, and you get a little personal sensibility of who people are. I'm enjoying the morning shows and the late shows much more than I did before, actually. So Christian, we also already, Sarah and Jonas have already answered the question, what the success is to them. What is success to you?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, but I guess one way of defining it is achieving your own objectives, whatever those are. You can have objectives in terms of getting a specific job, or you can have private objectives, or obviously you can have financial objectives, becoming rich or becoming famous, and whatever those objectives are, when you feel you kind of achieve that objective, I guess that's a metric of success in a way.
Yeah. And for you then, like personally, that's when you have set up like a goal and you achieve it on no matter in whatever area, that's when that's successful to you.
Yeah, of course. So professionally, I think, if I look back, just getting my first job felt like a huge success, and that because it was something I really wanted to have, a specific job. When I changed career from telecoms into restaurants and managed to get the first restaurant up on Sturegatan in Stockholm, and that became kind of a success after 6 months, then I felt that was success to me, even was in a smaller scale, but it was, those are the points I remember the most in that sense.
Yeah, no, good, because that was also one of the question, what like one of these, like where you feel grateful when you're like, yes, I did it, sort of a thing, like getting your first job and getting that first restaurant successful or trendy or whatever you would call it.
Yeah. And another one was in my case selling that company, which became an objective. It wasn't from the start, but it became, and once I managed to do that, that also felt like a form of success, because you achieved what you had set out to do.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, then we were on to, then we were moving, and we were just talking to Jonas, who I was intrigued by him being part of the launch of Absolut Elyx. That's where we were when you jumped in, because I did not know that.
We're selling a lot of Elyx now, thanks to Jonas. So.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Good to hear.
Yeah. So you might have already answered this, but maybe not in like, and because I'm just thinking of questions that might help our audience, or I think part of our audience wants ideas and tips, because we, or I do at least, think that you have done quite well for yourselves in your different careers, but also we're sharing just stories and having some fun and opinions about different things. But one question that I had was, how did you get into where you are now? Like, because, we all choose different careers and different jobs. Was it like a certain things, like I would love to own my own restaurants, or I would like to, I don't know, like, where do you start when you get out of school, or when you're in your last year, or like to go in, what direction do you go in? How was it for your stories individually? Like, should I work and design Volvo cars, or should I, be in the restaurant business, like? Right.
So I don't know if the question was for me, but I'll start anyway.
Yep.
So no, I think it's an interesting question, because for me, I had this huge pivot, going from being in product development for telecoms to standing on the floor of running a restaurant. It was nothing I'd never dreamed about in terms of making the jump. It was driven by several different factors, but to simplify it a bit, I had been living abroad for 4 to 5 years in Germany and the UK. I felt it was time to go back. I was tired of what I was doing at that time and felt telecom was getting boring. But first and foremost, I think I was at the point where I felt I would kind of, it was before kids and family, and I wanted to try and do my own thing and build my own company. So that was the main driver, really, to jump into restaurants. It wasn't the passion for actually running restaurants. It's more the fact that I wanted to build my own company, and I saw an opportunity that happened to be in the restaurant industry.
Great. Yeah, exactly that sort of what I was looking for. Like, how do you decide in the beginning? You know, we all take so different avenues of where we go and where we end up. So great. Sara?
I started working in hospitality when I was 15. So I worked at a 5-star hotel in Gothenburg, Elite Plaza Hotel, and I worked on the weekends, and I loved it. And I worked in the breakfast and room service, and it was amazing. I really enjoyed it. I probably didn't think that I was gonna end up having a career in hospitality, but that sort of just happened when I moved to London and started working for Soho House, because I think that what Nick has built, our CEO and founder, is pretty extraordinary. And I think that it's not just a restaurant. Obviously, it's a membership club, and with that comes a different business part of the business. And I've always really enjoyed working for him.
Yep, great. Awesome. Jonas?
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I could tell you that it's been some kind of a master plan that's led me to where I am today, but it just wouldn't be true. I think we have to go back to my university days when I was at the Stockholm School of Economics. I think the honest answer is that marketing was what I found to be the sort of least boring of the disciplines. You know, that we were all reading. You know, people went into finance and they all wanted to work at Goldman Sachs in New York, or slave away at McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group and these companies, which are terrific companies, don't get me wrong, but that just didn't hold any appeal to me. I thought that marketing was the most interesting part. And so once that decision was made, it became, you know, that's how it all started. Procter and Gamble, which was where I spent my first 10 years, was then, and probably still today, considered one of the best marketing schools. Even when you're out of university, they teach you almost everything that you need to know around marketing. And I really enjoyed it, and I went all around the world. And I think one of the pleasures of going around the world is to see the success of Swedish business. I saw H&M, and I saw IKEA, and I saw Scandinavian Airlines, and of course I saw Absolut vodka. It was everywhere, and it was the pinnacle of marketing success. And then just randomly they called me in 2005, I think it was, and wondered if I'd be interested in coming over to Absolut to run Europe. And it was difficult for me to say no to against that context. And then after that, you know, as we talked in the beginning, I haven't really thought much about my next jobs. I've just tried to keep my head down and do a good job where I am, and then the next one has sort of just jumped. And that's really what happened, and that's been the path.
I am laughing, or I was laughing a little bit when you said, like, randomly Absolut called you. I have found with very successful and hardworking people who enjoy what they do that there is no random ever. Those are the things, like what Sarah just said as well, like they offered me the job, you know, at Cecconi. She didn't have to apply for it. But it seems like you guys, our panelists, are that seems to be a common thread, that you go sort of like, I don't know, like they just offered it to me. I don't know how they got my phone number or my contact info or whatever. Just sharing my own opinion in regards to that, of talking to a lot of fantastic people and meeting a lot of people over the year in all sorts of business and industries. Again, a common thread always is this, like, I met them and they offered me a job. But I think it has to do with the hard work and the love, maybe. At least that's just my opinion, that, you know, sort of propels you forward, and other people who are looking for great people just see that, you know, somehow. So, well, that's good to know, you know. So I don't know what that gives our audience. Work really hard and love what you do, and people will just call you automatically. I don't know if it's that easy, but, you know, I'm just saying, I think it is interesting always, because when I talk to people and my own colleagues as well, I usually ask that question, like, how in the world did you get into what you're doing currently? You know, if they're really good at it, or things like this. And that's to seem to be, it might not have been a goal or a dream to begin with. It just sort of ended up that way because they followed their path. So anywho, well, very good. Then I was gonna say, I mean, this might, I don't know, does any one of you have any tips for the audience like how to get your dream job? Let's say that they have more specifics, like they have a dream, like they also want to work at Lvmh in Paris. You know, like what? How in the world do you get there, Jonas? Like, you know, you have it and you put it as a pin on your billboard, but where do you start?
I don't want to get repetitive, but you know, I think it's still worth underlining that if you're spending most of your working life dreaming about your next job, it may not come. I really think that the best thing to do is to be really good at what you're doing now, whilst at the same time having an idea maybe of where you want to go, or as Christian said, having some objectives. I think is incredibly important. So you're, you know, to have some kind of rudder. I think one of the things that I would maybe then add, if we're in the sort of tip section, is I still believe in today's world that personal contacts and relationships is unbeatable. You can't get around on just skills alone. And I think if you're a very social individual, and if you really take an effort to get to know people, and maybe even, you know, people in the industries that you aspire to, I think that has to be step number one. As for me, if I get an application or something from somebody that I don't know, I have to say it's very unlikely that I'll look at it. You know, I think we just get so inundated with information and CVs and resumes. But if it's a friend who says this is a really good person, take a look at it, I think that will make all the difference. So remember that personal contact piece in the area where you may want to end up. I think that's invaluable.
Yeah, good note, actually. Thank you. I did not have that on my piece of paper, Jonas. Excellent. Sara, do you have anything to add, or Christian?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with what Jonas is saying for sure. The personal relationships are vital, and I think they're super important. But also to when you're in the job, to, I mean, sure, work smart and not hard, and also have fun with it. I mean, in hospitality, I mean, at the end of the day, what we do, we're serving food and drinks. We're not saving lives, so, you know, enjoy the moments, like have fun with it, instead of, you know, it's not that serious, and try to just have fun with it as well.
Yeah. A couple of points perhaps. I think one of the threads I guess you could take from this discussions in terms of you know, getting to maybe where we are in that sense is that there was no specific plan, I think, for anyone. And I think that's one of the points I would make, that, you know, I didn't have a plan when I was 20, 25, 100% or 30. It kind of evolves. So I just spoke to another person today that is around the 20s and feeling like, what am I going to do with my life? I don't know what my dream job is. Well, you don't need to know that. You know, just find something you enjoy that gives you energy, go with that, and see where it takes you. I think that's one of the points. Then in terms of networking, I 100% agree. Although I think that there's a slight note to make, that sometimes I get the impression that especially when you're younger, that you feel like networking is kind of a separate thing. You need to do networking, then you need to job or work. Networking needs to be based on what you do, in my view. The contacts I have that are good contacts, I can utilize. They are contacts I've somehow worked with and they believe I do a good job. So it's not having a business card from someone I kind of met at you know, a mingle somewhere. Which is not to say you shouldn't get a business card at a mingle from someone, because that might lead you somewhere. But that network that you really can, that really can bring leverage to you, that is based on things you've done with them or somehow connected with them.
Yeah, good points in all of it. Thank you. Now I'm approaching how you all deal with challenges, because no matter how brilliant you are, you're still going to get up against, as I believe all of us are, setbacks, or like, I didn't get the job, or something happened on the job, or dang it, that didn't go as predicted. Like, how do you deal with it? What's a good coping mechanism for dealing with it, so don't fall off completely or quit what you're doing or something like this? Anyone can jump in.
How to deal with challenges.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, anything. I mean, you guys have worked for a long time, but like anything, if the sales for Absolut Elyx wasn't like super great in the beginning, or the label or anything, or problems at the work, like internally with employees, or you know, the upper management, or any of those things before you reached yourself the upper management.
So I think maybe I'm happy to volunteer some thoughts. I mean, we're all going to have challenges. We're all gonna feel stressed. Somebody who doesn't feel that, you know, is probably not that passionate about what they're doing. I think the important thing is, Sarah, I think, said something very important a while back, which is most of us are not in the business of curing cancer and saving lives. And I do think that it's important to sort of keep in perspective that a job is still a job, and look out sometimes and look at nature and realize that it's not life or death stuff. And as basic as it sounds, I think that realization can be really important to get perspective, because unless you have perspective, I think it becomes very difficult to deal with challenges, and the stress of those challenges overcome the actual notion of solving the challenge. I think another thing to remember, which has helped me a lot, is to remember that I think stress is when you worry about things that you can't really control. Worrying about things that you can't control is not a very useful emotion. I think the best way of relieving stress is to think about what are those things that you can control, and then work really damn hard to make sure that you are very, very buttoned up, very put together, very well prepared, that you've thought about everything that is within your control. And once you've done that, the chips may fall where they may. But that, to me, I think is a great way of dealing with adversity and challenges, to separate yourself from the problem. It can be quite clinical, it's a job, and then second of all, making sure that you're not worrying about things that are outside of your control. I think that's what I would maybe offer.
I love it. I'm going to steal that from you, Jonas, and use it really in meetings, you know, like where you sit around and trying to solve something that is completely out of your control, or worrying about it, spending way too much time. I think that's super excellent. I am truly going to write it down. I am using that one just to implement it, because I am one of those people that I want to try to be effective and not spend so much time on things that you really truly don't know what's going to happen. So that's a great one. Sara?
I like that a lot, what Jonas said. I think that for me, when it comes to challenges, I like just to talk about it and sort of break it down. If you like, I call my dad every morning when I walk to work, and it's helpful to talk about it. Like not doing a pros and cons list, but talking about it, and breaking the problem down. And as Jonas said, if it is something that's out of my control, then just like let it go, and then work on the things that I can actually affect.
Yeah, no, that's good as well, because somebody else might see something that you don't see if you talk about it to somebody else. You know, see it from a different perspective. So, Christian?
Yeah, no, it's also brilliantly said. No, but I think adding on to that, I 100% agree. You know, when you have a tough challenge, it's very easy to become emotional, and what you need to be is rational and get perspective, as Jonas said, and that can be a challenge. But just trying to accept the fact that you are emotional and trying to address and put those emotions to the side can help you. And that's the theoretical way. Obviously, in real life, that's sometimes very challenging, right? And the other part is the classical circle of influence. You know, try to put things outside of the circle of influence, out of the room. Don't bother it. And the third thing I would maybe add to it is kind of confront the brutal facts, or the facts at least. You know, just be honest about where you are, and also say this is where we are. It doesn't matter what happened, and that's quite often what at least I end up in thinking. Oh, if I had done this, or if someone had done that, forget about it. This is where we are. Let's focus on where we want to get instead. And that's easier said than done many times, but it's kind of at least a theory of it.
Yeah, it is sometimes easier said than done, but important notes. And I do think that that sometimes is just as much part of building this happiness successfully as we were talking about before, that you're not afraid to tackle problems or you don't avoid them, and you know, all of those things, because otherwise, in my experience, they build up and you never get to a resolve, or you don't feel the peace, so you can actually focus on what is at hand. So since we're talking about difficult and stress and all of that, since we are all speaking from home, I have to address COVID-19, because that certainly is a huge, huge stress element. And like what Jonas said, no, we can't predict it. We don't know the outcome, and we can't control all of those things. Without this webinar is not supposed to be about the coronavirus, whatever, but we are all experiences, so there's no way of not taking that in. I just want to briefly touch on it with you three and just say, is there anything that you have done, you know, like during this that sort of have helped the situation and to deal with what has been going on here in the spring of 2020 all over the world, in all businesses?
I think, I mean, it obviously connects very well to the previous question, and this is a huge challenge. You know, this is an enormous challenge. How do you deal with it? There's so many unknowns. We have business in LA and then in Scandinavia and Sweden, and it's different circumstances, same main challenge, but the way the society is addressing it, and you know, the government support and so forth is different. So we need to address it in different ways. We're locked down in LA, and we're still up and running in Sweden, albeit with very low numbers. It poses very different challenges, but it's a good example where you just need to conclude that it's outside of our circle of, you know, control. We can't influence that. We just need to deal with the metrics, which actually makes it kind of easy in LA right now, because we're locked down. We're not allowed to be open, so we don't need to think about whether or not we should be open. And then I think we still haven't come to we're looking at how we will address kind of post-corona world in terms of guest behavior in the restaurant industry. What are people going to expect? Most likely gloves and face masks in LA, probably not in Sweden. How are we gonna, you know, what level are we gonna be on that? We're looking at that, but it's all very much theoretical at this point. So I think the metrics and the measures we need to put in place to actually deal with that is something that has to come, and it will be a huge challenge, because right now you just focused on surviving.
Yeah, and how is it, of course, yes. How is it then to deal with the stress? Because the stress, like let's say with Sarah and Christian, who are sort of both in the restaurant business, with employees, and you know, the worries about can somebody, you know, get this disease, you know, that you're working with, because you're working very close to people and you have people that you oversee, both of you, like how to ease their fears or how to manage them, so to speak, so nobody is you know, I mean, again, it's out of your control, but as a person who is in a leadership role, you still, I suppose, feel a little responsible in regards to how to just manage this current situation with the people under, you know, that works for you and works for the restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, we try to keep the communication as open as possible with them, and we talk to them on a weekly basis. We are actually still open for delivery and takeouts, so we're trying to sort of get that going quite a bit. But then we also just making sure that we're looking after the staff. We're working with different companies to make sure that we can deliver food for them and help them in any way we can. And same with the frontliners. So we're working with St. John's Foundation in downtown LA to help serve meals for the people working on the front line. So as much as possible, we're just trying to keep the communication flowing for the staff, because of course it's extremely terrifying situation to be in right now. but yeah, fingers crossed. I think that we're going to be able to open in a few weeks or so.
Yeah, and it's your employees and people working at the restaurant and all of that, they've been okay, you know. I mean, I'm talking about just like internal stress and all of those things that sometimes is doesn't show itself, but again, that maybe you see and try to do something positive about it, or like you said, maybe just talking, or yeah.
I mean, the staff usually, I mean, they call me when they feel like they want to talk to me, and I communicate as much as I can. But I mean, as much as it's an open door policy, but not right now because it's not a lot of staff at work. But yeah, I am just being there for them and updating as we go is definitely something that I feel like they're appreciative of.
Yeah, great, thank you. I don't know, anything, Jonas, that on that one that you want to share, or?
Well, first of all, very, very selfishly, I've been, I resigned on March the 1st to take my next job, and obviously 2 weeks later, all of this happened. So my timing was either epically good or epically bad from a personal perspective. But I think more broadly, what can I say? I'm obviously in the spirits industry. It's an incredibly resilient industry, and sales are up rather than down. From a business standpoint, it's not really affecting the world that I'm in. People want to have a drink, maybe even more in some ways, you know, when we're going through tough times or good times. I think the thing that's maybe made me happy is to see that there's been quite a lot of, you know, coming together and social responsibility in the industry. I think a lot of the companies have changed their lines to create hand sanitizers and other things that spirit companies can do to actually help. So that's been good to see. I've, you know, my previous employer and my future employer, they've both done that. But, you know, I'm just in this case very fortunate to be in an industry that seems to be a little recession-proof and almost bulletproof in some ways. The difference, of course, being, you know, the businesses that Christian and Sarah represent, sales is zero. But people tend to make up for it by drinking their wine and beer and spirits at home instead.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Sometimes that's, I think it is still important to recognize that not everything, no matter how successful you are perceived, period, that of course everybody has difficulties and have to handle stress and setbacks and not to give up and, you know, all of that, but everybody's different. So I just wanted to approach it a little bit. Again, I'm looking at the time. I have so many more questions for everybody, so I'm gonna have to skip a bunch because I also want to get to the questions that our audience have, because I can see that we have questions from the audience. So maybe just like one last question. Again, forgive me to the panelists and our audience because I had lots and lots of more. I probably could have talked to you for like 3 hours, but this is our first, so we'll learn. Then let's say this, what's your, well, Jonas, you're in between jobs. We have to check back with you after September, right? And see a couple of other things and have you back with us. But I don't know, maybe you can answer on from your previous, you know, work and all of these things. First, what's your favorite part about your job, if there is just one favorite part? And also, these are my last questions for you until we go to the audience question. Who inspires you?
Starting with me, the most fun part of my job. Well, look, I'm working in an industry which is incredibly fun. So is obviously Sarah and Christian as well. It's hospitality. It's about people going out and celebrating and enjoying themselves. And that's just a fun place to be. I remind myself constantly what it must be like if you're like in the packaged meat industry or something like that. I hope nobody on the webinar is. And if you are, I hope you're enjoying yourself. But I think it's worth recognizing that, you know, we are about fun. You know, that's what this is. It's about going out and having a good meal and a good drink. And for me, that was such a contrast going from Procter and Gamble, which, as I said, was a great school. It's still about diapers and feminine hygiene and shampoo, and making the switch into spirits, which is all about emotion and especially for a marketeer. It's an incredibly fun industry. I used to go to Walmart and look at diaper shelves, and now I go to Cecconi's or Soho House, and I look at the spirit shelf, and that's just a tremendous amount of fun. So that's that I think is the fun and the joy of what I do.
Right.
People that inspire me. Probably should have thought of an answer on this one. Look, I think there's a lot of inspirational people. Obviously, there's a lot of successful people as well. I suppose the people that are most inspirational are people that are successful not only at their jobs, but also successful in other places. If it's family or if it's philanthropy or wherever that might be. And just now being a father myself, looking at my own dad and how much time he was able to spend with me whilst being good at his job, I think if I had to pick somebody, then it's going to be Daddy.
Yeah. Thank you. Very nice. Sara?
Yeah. So at work, I mean, of course, it is all about fun and hospitality, and it is like having a great time and making sure that the guests and the staff are happy. But I think that, and of course, Cecconi's and Soho House being in the clique of West Hollywood, of course, we get a lot of famous people and actresses and actors, and that's all fun to, of course, to look after those people. But it's more so the people that I have, because Cecconi's been open for 10 years. So it's more so getting to know the people that comes in 5 times a week and they sit at the same table and they don't even order. They know, like the server knows exactly what they're getting, and sitting down and talking to those people. That's like the best part of the job, that I get to meet like these random amazing people. Yeah, that's definitely the best part.
Right.
Yeah. And I would say that inspires me, definitely my mom. She worked really hard, and she looked after people, mostly old people with dementia. And I think that that's where I sort of found my love for looking after people. So that's definitely
nice. Okay. Christian?
I think one thing I do love about being in this industry, which is obviously reflected in what I do in my job, is it's evolving so extremely quickly. It's just changing from one year to the other, which is very challenging because it's highly competitive, but also it provides for endless opportunities. And if you want to bring a new idea into the world, it's a business you can do that in. So that's one thing I enjoy. Then from a personal perspective, in all honesty, what I truly love, which is more because I haven't had, let's say, a job by being employed by someone else for 15 years, it's the flexibility it provides me that I'm running my own business in that sense. And I love that. I control my calendar to some extent, and that is something that's very important to me personally. In terms of inspirations, I think, yeah, I agree. I should have picked a name beforehand who you can throw and sound impressive. But you have the big people like obviously Bill Gates and those who spend their millions and billions on making the world better. I think that is inspirational, truly inspirational. But it's also abstract to some extent, because it's not inspirational in the way that I would like to be Bill Gates, because I won't. But on the other end of the scale, I have to say my 2 sons, partly because they are so extremely curious, and the age is 7 and 9, and their curiosity is inspiring me in a way that I feel like, oh, I need to get back being that curious on life. Sometimes you feel like you've become a little bit lazy in terms of wanting to learn new stuff, and then they remind me and inspire me in that way.
Okay, great. Yeah, I love it. All of yours, very touching as well. So thank you for sharing. We do actually have a lot of questions. We might run over a minute or two, just because I want to try to get to as many of them as possible, and also, if possible, to keep maybe the answers short so we can get through as many if it is. I have one from actually somebody that I didn't know was going to join today, but I'm so happy. Sara Ekman, that used to be on our board, that first also introduced me to Jonas or Janina. So yay, from all the way from Sweden now. Sara is wondering if any one of you, if success has come with any sort of sacrifice. Very good question, as always.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's some sacrifice that's come along.
I mean, a massive one. I mean, I have my family back in Sweden, and I live in Los Angeles. I mean, that's the biggest sacrifice that I took when I moved. And of course, my close childhood friends over there. But I mean, my family. I live very far away from them, and it can be really hard sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. We'll go with that, from one Sarah to the next.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll meet, both of you, which are wonderful. Again, I'm gonna just go because the questions you can't see them, but I can see them and they're just sort of coming in. So I want to try, and they're really good. So we have another one. This is for Jonas. It does not have a name here. Yes, from Carl, actually. And he is saying, congratulations, Jonas, on your successful career, and how did you land the job at Lvmh in the middle of the Corona crisis? Was it an interview? Was it a phone call? You know, How did you make the connection?
That's a fair question, obviously. This happened way before the Corona crisis, fortunately. Again, it was a similar situation as to when I joined Pernod, Ricard, and Absolut Vodka, in that it was a recruitment company. Lvmh hires a recruitment company to find their future leaders, and they got in touch with me in New York City a little over a year ago. And then one thing led to another until I found myself in a very scary situation, sitting in a penthouse suite on the Upper East Side in front of Bernard Arnault, who started that company a while back. And I was very nervous because he's considered one of the best business minds in the world. I was trying to prepare for it as well as I could. But it was very friendly and it went well. And then, they extended an offer to me a month or two before all of this craziness began. So I think that the short answer is it happened before. And again, it was not something that I looked for. It sort of just came to me.
And you were nervous. You're so good at what you do. You're never nervous, Jonas.
He's a scary man, I promise you.
All right, I'll believe you. But did they? Well, how did you get? I mean, they called you, right? Or they contacted you and said, "Come and meet with him." Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, some companies, and it's smart by Lvmh, some companies, they didn't have a specific job in mind. They were just looking for future leadership and talent. And then they decided that I would be a good fit for the corporation, and then they looked for a job for me. So I think that's a little different, but it's a smart thing for companies to do. Yeah.
Great. Then we also have, hold on, Krista Bergman is wondering if you have ever, any one of you have ever had a mentor, and if so, what did that mean to you?
Yes, I've had a mentor. I've had one more formal, actually, through a program quite some years ago, but then more of a over a couple of years, there was an older person in Sweden that I had lunches with, and that, just in hindsight, I realized how important those discussions were in my development, and I didn't always do that at the time. But he enabled with very smart questions just to open my mind. And he did it in a way that I didn't expect a mentor to do, which I expected to be more like, this is what you should do, and very formal coaching. But this was more just asking me questions that lingered with me for a week or so, and that helped me a lot, actually.
Great. Anyone else with a mentor? No? Or
I haven't had a mentor. I mean, obviously, I haven't been as brave as Christian have to like run off and start my own company. It's been something I've been thinking about. I just haven't had the guts to do it. I've always been in large corporations, and my experience there is more important than a mentor. I think is to make sure that you have supporters at higher levels, people that believe in you and that manage your career. Because when they're sitting down and thinking about which person is going to go to the next job, somebody there needs to have your name in mind and think of you. So I think that is very, very important to make sure that you have that support, one or two people in senior positions in the company.
Yeah. Great. I also have another question. There's more. I'm just looking at the time here. So there's Andrew from Newport Beach, who is wondering, what are some qualities you look for when you hire somebody? And also, is there something one should not do in a job interview? Or things you don't like. I mean, it's all of our opinions, obviously, so it's not like a rule book for anyone, but obviously you all three are in the capacity and have been for a long time to hire other people. So you probably have had interviews a lot yourselves throughout your careers. Anything that sticks out, like in a job interview, positive and negative?
I'll do a quick answer and then let the others answer. But obviously, when you spend years trying to build a company, you get very attached to it, and we have this typical cliche about cultures and values and so forth. But you can call it whatever you want. The personality of the company you're trying to build is something you need to see in that person. And typically you try to put that into values or what have you, but for me, it's always getting a sense of this. Is this a person I would like to work with? Do I think they fit the profile and the attitude that we believe this company should have? And if they don't, that doesn't mean they're not a good person. They might not be a good fit for us, right? And it's in that way more simplistic and more challenging, I guess, than other bigger corporations where you have other metrics to go by, I think. But it's very, very personality and attitude driven for me.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. It's different for everybody, I think. So it's just your personal opinion. Yeah, it becomes, I can see how it becomes very personal for you, Christian, because it's your company, your restaurant. Yeah. Sara or Jonas, anything that sticks out, either negative or positive, like, don't do that, or please do this, or?
I mean, I would say, when it comes to the positive, I'm always looking for, of course, they would have to have a certain amount of experience when it comes to food and wine, but then it's about the connection and the personality. It is so important. I think eye contact is really important. Someone who's sort of looking down and fumbling around, it makes me nervous. So eye contact is super important. And then asking a lot of questions, someone who's actually genuinely interested about the job. It's really important too. And one thing that I don't like when people don't do is when they don't pull in the chair when they leave after the interview. If they don't do that, I'm like, nah, yeah.
Oh, I gotta remember when I come to Cecconi's next time to always make sure I pull in the chair.
Quickly add, be yourself. I think number one, people tend to go into interviews just trying to impress, and that always fails. If you be yourself, read up on the role and the company that you're joining, so you're knowledgeable. People will be impressed if you have the confidence to just be who you are and talk with some humility about the things you've achieved.
And don't be late. It's a killer.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Thanks though for pointing it out, Christian. So we are now like a minute away. Just to our audience, there's so many more questions here, so please forgive me if I did not come to your question. All of them are actually really good. I'm impressed. There's not one single question that I can see on my feed that is not good. So who knew? Like, intelligent, successful audience that we have. And to our panelists as well, this was amazing. You know, this came up, we never had a webinar before. We usually at SACC-LA do all of our events live. We have had many of them at Jonas's fashionable, super trendy villa in the hills here, the Hollywood Hills, at his previous jobs, obviously, Absolut. So thank you. We will continue with Absolut Elyx, Jonas, and then we will also look forward to what you're going to do in the future, which sounds so exciting. And with Sarah as well, you know, we'll all come to Cecconi for sure. And the same thing with Christian, because we were already talking about an event just like a week before we got to this lockdown at V downtown LA, which is this new restaurant that Christian has, where I already been, thank goodness. So I can speak very highly about it, but I can't wait to come down to downtown, Christian, and have the event we were talking about down there. So just the last thing that I want to mention, which is we're 1 minute over, and then we'll click out. Hopefully we can do this in the future again. Thank you to everybody. To our panelists, the very successful, both personal and talented, since I know you, or in business, is it important, you think, you might have answered it, but it hasn't been a direct question, to love and have fun with what you do in order to be successful?
100%. Absolutely. I think that it goes hand in hand. I think that if you don't love what you do, then you shouldn't be doing it. I think definitely love and success goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
First of all, I think you probably need to recognize that I imagine that the majority of people do not really love their jobs. And I think that's a really sad thing, but I think it's important to recognize that if you're in a job that you love, you're in the very lucky group of people that's in that situation. I would say happiness, you're happy with what you do, you will do better. You do better, you're going to be happier about what you're doing, and that will create the virtuous spiral. So that's why I agree. You have to love what you're doing.
I agree, obviously, but I also think it doesn't mean that you actually love every minute of it, and you won't. I think you need to love the context and the path you're on, but not every day.
Yeah, I think it is true. Not every day. I have those moments. I truly love what I do. I truly love doing this for an hour. I mean, this is like really a treat for me to speak to the three of you and to be able to do it for at the capacity audience for SACC-LA. So, you know, this whole time was 100% fun, but I have my moments as well where it's what I do things, you know, every here and there. Again, I think we'll end. Thank you to everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy. Soon we'll be in this, what we call the new normal, and we'll see you soon again in person and maybe on the web. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.